Welcome to Better Fishing with Two Bald Biologists, a podcast from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. We're your hosts, Corey Oakley and Ben Ricks, two bald guys who happen to be fish biologists and avid fishermen. We hope the information that you learn in this podcast will help you think like a fish and become better fishermen. Well, welcome back, guys, to another edition of Better Fishing with Two Bald Biologists. Ben, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm glad it's starting to warm up a little bit.
Spring is on the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about spring.
We get to talk about spring and spring fisheries.
Yeah. Still ain't done a whole lot of fishing yet.
It is a magical time.
It is magical time. I am going to do some fishing this spring, though. I'm dead set that I'm doing that.
Is now a good time to put in my leave request?
It is.
Publicly?
Yes,
so
publicly
that it cannot be turned down?
Yeah. We do have things scheduled out. People don't know this. Obviously we schedule a podcast, but we're looking to do some spring fishing shows that will be both video and on the podcast as well. So look forward to that in the future. Maybe headed back west.
We get to go on the grand voyage once more.
Once more. We're going to try it one more time out west.
Maybe for the last time.
Might be for the last time. Might be the last time we ever go there.
At least for the podcast.
Yeah. So
we're running out of excuses.
That's right. So everybody look into that. Those will probably hit early summer. So I'm looking forward to those. But we're planning some big things for the podcast. Once again, what is it? Like, subscribe, sign up, share, all those things about our podcast, Better Fishing with Two Bald Biologists, with all your friends. And yeah, we love having y'all listen to us. We're trying new things with the video. We're still working on that, as you can tell. I appreciate the video folks being here today as well, because I don't know, somehow they have a job of trying to make us pretty. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, they're doing their best.
And that's all we can ask. That's what my parents always said of me, just do your best.
I'm here to talk about fish. If you're looking for fashion tips, this is the wrong podcast.
This is the wrong podcast for you. You should tune in somewhere else. Well, today we're joined by, I don't know how to describe the man. He really is kind of the guru of growing all things fish, particularly coastal fish. I'm not trying to pump him up, but Jeff Evans is the superintendent of the Watha State Fish Hatchery. Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Hey, Corey. Great to be with you.
Jeff might be are you the longest term fish division employee at this point in time?
Head dinosaur in charge.
You are the head dinosaur. But Jeff's been around a long time, seen a lot of things. We're going to pick his brain today about growing fish and about the Watha Fish Hatchery, and particularly about striped bass. We're going to talk quite a bit about that because it is spring. And we like to talk about spring things when spring comes. But Jeff, tell us a little bit about the Watha Fish Hatchery and what you do there.
Well, the Watha Fish Hatchery is one of 6 of the Commission's hatcheries.
7 now. We added one.
Excuse me. Thanks for correcting me.
That's my job.
I know. We're one of 2 warm water hatcheries.
Yes, that is correct.
The Watha Fish Hatchery has existed as a Wildlife Commission hatchery since 1992. So I'm fortunate enough to have been there since the beginning. Our warm water fish hatchery is...
Was that in kindergarten? No, I was older.
Well,
anyway.
It's just the beginning of the hatchery as a commission hatchery. Actually visited as a college student prior to that. But we've raised a variety of warm water species, just about anything that you would think a state agency would produce.
Tell us some of those things so that people get a taste of what you do.
All right. Well, currently we produce striped bass hybrids, channel catfish, white catfish, and bluegill. In the past, we've raised a number of other species.
You've done American shad,
threadfin shad, white crappie, largemouth, different sunfish species, red breast, red ear. We also, I would be negligent if I didn't mention, we also participate in the walleye production. So we play a small part in...
There's a podcast on that already?
In producing. We participate in that. Small percentage of the total program for walleye come from Watha.
Yeah. And your favorite of all of them that you haven't named yet is the magnificent ram's horn.
That is correct.
I know how much you appreciate that animal.
That is correct.
Which is a snail.
we take some pride in being the pilot project for producing that aquatic species of interest.
And he's even had some trout take a vacation. They're not there all the time.
They're not there all the time, but we actually, in the day, we have attempted to produce trout.
Talking about mountain trout, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Brook and brown trout. We actually, Santa Claus brought us some eggs one year, a day early before Christmas, and we attempted to produce those.
How'd that go?
That's why we have 5 other hatcheries.
That's why we have mountain trout hatcheries.
It left a challenge for the future, which one thing we're probably neglecting is people are going, Watha, where the heck is that? Right?
That is a good question.
That is a good question. Where is Watha? I know where Watha is. Ben knows where Watha is, and certainly you do. And there's a small portion of the population of the state of North Carolina that knows where Watha is.
That's correct.
250 other people know where Watha is.
That's right. 250
That's correct. We're one of North Carolina's best kept secrets.
Well, you might want to keep your mouth shut.
Oh, yeah. Well,
because people are pouring over the border. Once again, soapbox. Sorry.
But anyhow, we are located in North Pender County, which is about 30 miles north of Wilmington. So we're kind of tucked away in the southeastern corner of the state, which lends us to the longest growing season in our state for warm water fish. So pretty ideal location. Fairly logistic. We got our 40 one way or 74 the other way. So
you can get the fish moved to wherever.
We can get them moved to wherever. Of course, we stock all across the state from stripers at Hiwassee, which y'all had a podcast about that.
You're doing a good job on
Doing
those
a good
fish.
job on that, by the way. Between you and Powell, I'm just saying, you growing the fish, Powell managing how many goes in, I'm telling you, it's spot on. Our success would say it was spot on.
It's strong. That's a win for the agency.
It's a win.
Well, that's from what I understand.
Yeah, you should get out there and go and try to catch one.
Maybe someday I'll get the opportunity.
I mean, you got to go through Georgia and South Carolina to get there. But, eventually you end back up in North Carolina.
It'll
Just
make
saying.
you appreciate the North Carolina DOT.
Yeah, they've built a lot of roads.
They've done some work.
They have. Yeah. Anyway, we digressed. Sorry, you were talking about Watha.
Oh, yeah. But at any rate, that's where we're at. I've been there for a long time. I really like it down there.
Yeah, you seem to. You hadn't gone anywhere.
And
That's good.
One of our main purposes and our roles is producing striped bass and striped bass hybrids. And that's one thing that the hatchery was actually obtained for. And the commission has followed through with dedication to that program throughout the years. And we'd like to consider it a success.
Sure. Hey, you can grow them for sure.
If you have caught a striped bass in a reservoir in North Carolina,
You've caught Jeff's fish.
you can send your thank you note to
1-800 thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, you can send it to the podcast, and I'll forward it to Jeff. So, but Watha has a really good water quality. They got a lot of whales. They got about to get even better water supply, but they've got pretty good water quality. It helps for growing striped bass, which brings me to my next statement that I forgot to say in our last podcast, which is that fish do need water. Correct, Jeff?
That they do.
The hatchery would not be much of a hatchery without that water, right?
We've done some experimentation and they always.
Okay, now that we've covered that.
I'm glad y'all covered that.
And Jeff
was
moves
worried.
fish around,
I can't believe we
but no
forgot
one
it.
else should.
Yes. yeah, Jeff does move fish around, but no one else should. That's exactly right.
But you do bring up an interesting category for the Watha Fish Hatchery, which is our water supplies exclusively supplied through groundwater or water wells. So we're capable currently of about 1,000 gallons a minute. Most of our hatcheries, or nearly all of our other hatcheries, rely on surface water, either gravity flows from our reservoir, gravity flow from a creek, river, or some type of pump system. So that's what makes Watha a little bit unique in ours is our water supply. The water quality of that well water just happens to be pretty doggone optimum for producing striped bass and striped bass hybrids.
How big a facility is it? So I would dare say it's the largest footprint of a hatchery we have. Maybe Setzer might be a little about the same size, but it's a lot of ponds.
As far as production space, I would say it is the largest. We have 37 production ponds that total right at 41 surface acres of water. So that's considered a large farm.
It's a lot of work. When you're full, it's a lot of work. Well, it's a lot of work, period, but it's a lot of work when you're full for sure.
Y'all been giving me a lot of credit, but we do have a very experienced hatchery team that work at the Watha Fish Hatchery.
Yes, you have great staff.
We have a great staff. All of them are dedicated to fulfilling whatever our mission is for the year. And I'd be remiss not to mention them because they play a vital role in everything that happens.
Well, we have talked about that before. Like, a lot of people don't quite understand. You guys live on the hatchery. It is part of your life and lifestyle. It is a huge level of dedication to work on one of our hatcheries. And we appreciate all of your efforts for sure. To all the guys, not just you.
Oh, sure. Well, it's a unique situation. Most careers don't involve that. However, as a norm, when you're farming confined animals, it's a necessity to have staff on site.
Well, it's no different than growing cows. You're going to be living with the cows. It's the same thing, basically, because you got to keep them alive. Even a little bit different than cows, fish can turn south quick. I think a cow probably could turn south quick. A cattle farmer probably tell me they'd turn south quick,
Yeah.
But fish can really turn south quick.
Well, it goes back to Ben's wise comment about that fish need water.
Yeah.
It takes staff to make sure the water is
On.
flowing, it's on, has the adequate
Yeah.
water quality, all that.
All those
So
things.
that's a full-time job.
It is. And they got to be fed and all that stuff. So, a lot of work.
So, we talked about striped bass. We talked about hybrid striped bass. In North Carolina, we also call hybrid striped bass Bodie bass. So if you see that in any of our literature, a Bodie bass is the same thing as a hybrid. Some people call them wipers. They got a lot of different names. So just wanted to cover
Palmetto
that.
bass in South Carolina.
Sunshine bass, maybe. So they're a fish of many names. But let's talk about striped bass for a minute.
Let's do it.
Spring has sprung. Jeff is making striped bass, and we've got a new season this year.
We do.
And I think our listeners want to hear about it.
Sure.
So things in the central southern management area, which if you're not a fish nerd in North Carolina, that just means the river's in the middle of the state on the coast. So the tar and the noose, we have worked diligently on that fishery for quite some time. We are not able to realize our recovery goals. So we've made a shift in management, and we want to provide opportunity, and we want to keep fish in the river for folks to catch. So there's opportunity, and then we need to maintain fish in the river so we can continue to research and figure out where the bottlenecks are, which is why Jeff is so important in part. We work with other hatcheries. Edenton National Fish Hatchery is another one, but Jeff has made the fish for the last 3 years for the Roanoke. He'll be making fish this year for the tar. So if you're fishing these areas, your fish are coming from Watha. Our biologists will go out and collect the fish. Jeff will spawn them at the hatchery. A few months later, little striped bass swimming around happy, all thanks to Jeff's efforts. So you're not going to catch and take these home yet. It'll take about, let's just say 3 years for them to get keeper
roughly.
size, maybe 2 for the
Maybe
fast
2.
growers.
Yeah.
But you can keep 1 fish a day, 18 to 22, or 1 over 27 for the month of April. So
April 1 to, was it 30th? Is that when it ends? I always get confused.
yeah, and we'll evaluate that. It was closed. We're opening it back up. We'll evaluate that. And if there's room to grow that fishery, we will. And if not, we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I think the take home to anglers is this about it, is we've done a tremendous amount of work through the biological work that we've done on the rivers, where our staff have gone out and looked at the species and how it's recovering or not recovering, and all the work that Jeff has done. I mean, Jeff probably has nightmares in his sleep trying to keep family groups apart so that we can tell that this fish is from the Noose, or this fish is from the Tar, or this fish is from the Cape Fear, or this fish is from the Roanoke, or whatever. Jeff has a lot of that going on at the hatchery. We've been stocking, 30 plus years in these rivers, particularly in those central rivers, the Noose and the Tar for sure. We've been stocking them 30 plus years. And what we found, folks, is that it's just not recovering the population. There is some other mechanism that is preventing that from happening. To be blatantly honest, we don't know what that is. We've investigated a lot of things. Those things don't always play out the way we think. We try to adjust those things, and it doesn't seem to help the population as a whole. And so what we have is a hatchery-produced fishery. There are not really any wild fish in those two rivers at this point, very limited at best. And reproduction does not seem to be going well. And we don't have the answers as to why that is. We've poked around at different things, and some things look promising, and some things are just kind of, that's not it, something else. And as Ben mentioned, one of the great things about the work that Jeff does at the hatchery is it allows an opportunity for people to still catch striped bass in these rivers and be able to take them home and harvest them during that month of April. But it also allows us to keep working on them and doing research so that we can restore them eventually over a long period of time. But this is not if this was a short, we got the answer, we'd have done it a long time ago. We're 30 years in. So it's not a short answer. And the only way Ben and I know how to be is to be honest with you. And we have worked very, very diligently as a staff long before Ben and I were here. Jeff, he was here. But but long before Ben and I were here, there were staff that worked very diligently on this animal to try to restore it to those central southern rivers. And it is just not worked out. And instead of having a moratorium, instead of saying you can't take those fish home, we want to provide opportunity and allow that opportunity for anglers to go out, catch them, take them home, because it is a traditional fishery in our state. And I grew up doing it and grew up doing it, so I get it. And we're going to keep working, folks.
If you give me that day off, I might go do it.
Yeah, I am dead set going in the month of April, at least a day, and taking my dad. We're going. We might not catch one, but we're going. Because, it's one of the fish that my dad loves to catch and loves to eat. He loves a rock stew better than anybody I know. So,
and it is a bit of a sad story because we didn't meet our recovery goals. But what we did learn is that we can stock fish and have a fishery. So it's not, yes, there's this way to frame it where it's doom and gloom, but there's also this way to frame it as, well, this is what we can do. And we can provide a fishery. We can provide folks a place to fish and fish to catch there. And if we can do that, it's not all sad times.
I actually don't view it as doom and gloom. I think we've been here for a long time.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. This is the fishery. This is what we have in front of us. And I think we've had that for a long time. We've been trying to overcome that and prove to ourselves that it wasn't that, right? Just to be honest, we're trying to restore the fishery. And we've just come to a place where that's just not happening. It's not happening in the near future. It might happen way off, and it'll probably be long. I hope it's long after I'm gone, retired, because I don't have that much. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But you know what I'm saying? As fisheries go, short-term things don't really happen. It just doesn't turn around that fast. It takes a while for things to happen. And hopefully we find the thing that spurs recovery. That's my hope. And my staff and our staff will continue to work on that. But in the meantime, let's go catch them.
Right. In all likelihood, the window where the bottleneck is probably in the early life history. Probably within the first month of their life, there seems to be a problem. The good part about that for us biologists is that's just wheelhouse. He studies these fish. He knows a lot about their early life history. And he and a bunch of our other biologists have had a lot of discussions about the early life history of striped bass. And his experience has really helped us understand, maybe not completely because we hadn't figured out where the bottleneck is, but it's helped us to kind of understand the mechanisms that affect these fish in early life history. And so a lot of times I'll call Jeff and be like, Jeff, I just read this paper. I'm not sure.
Talk me off the ledge.
Yeah, talk to me about what I'm reading in terms of what you've seen. And it's really helped kind of put things in a practical light that really helps me understand what's going on. And we've had numerous of those discussions, and I almost always learn something new when that happens. And it's because he's seen it. He's lived it over the dinosaur times.
As we discussed on the previous podcast, at last month's podcast, we discussed he's unflappable. We're talking about you. He's unflappable. Like, he doesn't nah, that ain't going to happen. It's going to be like this. It's going to be all right. This is what the fish is going to do, because there's something about that experience, that 30 plus year experience. Sorry, not to age you, but that 30 plus years experience that just, it's like, we know this animal is going to do this in this period of time. And Jeff has seen a ton of different things. He's tried a ton of different things. I mean, I think a lot of people think that fish production folks are not researchers. They're just growers, right?
Right.
I mean, that's common misconception. Is that they're not really researchers. We're just growing them, And the truth of the matter is, y'all might be the greatest researchers of all, because it's a lot of trial and error. And it's a lot of, let's see if this works. And I mean, anyway, I went to a hatchery that's not in our state this past year, and they were talking about their technique of, I can't even remember the fish they were growing. It was a warm water fish, but they were growing something in a pond culture down in Georgia. And they were talking about, well, you got to do this at this point in time, and you got to stir it with this. And I mean, and it's like this wacky stuff, and you put this chemical on it and make it do this, and it makes it, and you need to use milk sometimes, and you need to use this sometimes. I'm like, who thought of all this? Like, that's not in a book. Like, that's the crazy part about it to me, is like, you guys will try anything to see if it'll work. And then once it works, you're like, hey, look at this thing. This is super cool what we can do. Now I'm talking too much. So you tell us all about it, Jeff.
I will say, before Jeff talks, I don't know anybody who works at a hatchery that is not trying to do it better than they did it last year.
Absolutely. It's always trying to improve. They are never sitting on their laurels, so to speak. They are always trying to make it better, more efficient, grow more. They have such a pride in, if I grew 1 million fish last year, I want to grow 1,100,000 this year. And then if they do that, they're like, it would get you in trouble. then you put this expectation out there, right? But then the next year's like, oh, I grew 1.1 million this year. I'm going to grow 1.2, 1.3 million this year, kind of thing. You just keep pushing yourselves, which I can appreciate for sure.
Well, that's part of the challenge of being at a fish hatchery, whether it's warm water, cool water, cold water. We have our farming recipes that we like to rely on, but it's like you said, we're always striving to do things maybe a little bit more efficient, a little bit better, get a little bit better survival rate, a little bit better feed conversion, so we can handle as many programs as you management biologists would like to throw at us. That's the fact.
I'm not one of those anymore, Jeff. You
well, I know that, but
now I just get blamed for everything, so don't worry about it.
In all honesty, throughout my career, I've seen the level of commitment and dedication from our administrators, from the commission right on down, for our hatchery facilities. They're committed to keeping them top notch. And it really just sets the tone for the staff to make the best utilization of these facilities that we can. So that's where it really comes from. I can just speak for Watha, for instance. Prior to the acquisition of that hatchery, we were just operating in a small warm water fish hatchery in Fayetteville, which is now the Peckman Fishing Education Center, with questionable water quality for striped bass and striped bass hybrids. Now, don't get me wrong.
It is the Sandhills.
Don't get me wrong. Staffs back then, they were just as dead. Things change, but that's one thing that hasn't. Commitment and dedication from staff. So the commission spent over $1 million to purchase this hatchery, which is a lot of money back in 1992. A lot of money for me today, but
Yeah, I was going to say, it's still a lot of money. If anybody wants to give me $1 million,
That's
I'll
right.
take it off their hands.
And that was really the purpose of that, was so that the striped bass and striped bass hybrid stocking program could expand for North Carolina. In the schemes of fish culture, it's relatively new.
Yeah, it's in the
mid 70s into the 80s.
It's the last 50 years.
Where trout culture and that kind of cold water culture has been around a lot longer than that. But, management biologists had the foresight to seek out those opportunities for the anglers of our state to produce stripers and striped bass hybrids to be stocked in these reservoirs. And that was the role that was played by the purchase of the Watha Fish Hatchery. It gave us the space, the water quality to expand that program throughout time. We went through a renovation in 2006. Again, that was more commitment and dedication from the commission to our facility to improve it, to get us where we weren't relying on seining fish to harvest them. We had a state-of-the-art fish production building for spawning and holding fish, added another well, gave us all these capabilities where that program could continue to expand. Prior to those times, we were participating in coastal river restoration at some level, but not as much as we have since 2006 or so. Pretty much annually, there's been some restoration component from Watha, whether it be phase 2 stripers for the Cape Fear and moving into the Roanoke, and now we're going to shift to the tar for a period of time. And so, and all throughout, there's 16, 17 reservoirs that we've been stocking annually since the late 80s with striped bass and striped bass hybrids. And that just creates a tremendous opportunity for anglers and a large economic impact for the citizens of North Carolina when we can do that.
So let's nerd out for a minute. Let's say it's spring of the year, spring is sprung, and these management biologists that you speak of, they're horrible people. But these management biologists that you speak of bring you stripers into the hatchery. What is Watha staff going to do with them?
Well, obviously, it depends on the request and the origin of where these fish are coming from, but we obviously produce some hybrid striped bass. So we pretty much relied on the original cross of that,
which was a female striped bass and a male white bass.
Fertilizing female striped bass eggs with the melt of white bass males. So we've been, obviously, a portion of the fish that biologists collect for us are utilized to produce those hybrid stripers. And then a more significant portion are to produce just straight striped bass.
So if a fish comes into the hatchery, is it just good to go? You just throw it in the tank and put some males with it and be like, yay ha, we're done?
Yay ha. That's exactly the words. If you don't say yay ha,
it doesn't work.
Nothing.
Okay. I shouldn't have said that. That's probably going to be like on a clip reel in it. Yay ha.
I'm just trying to capitalize on
whatever.
It's kind of like a bowl of cereal. You just add milk and you're good to go. No, it's not quite that simple.
Not quite that simple.
Not quite that simple. Obviously.
I thought all this time it was quite that simple, Ben.
It never is.
Never is.
Obviously. And, we've had fish come in that maybe go through a sex change or something like that.
Yeah, I've had that phone call. I thought you said you were sending me females. I've had that phone call. You had that phone call? Probably not.
I have not had that one.
Well, I was with a group of people, so I'm going to claim that I was not the one that sent him the mail.
Right. I've maintained a level of deniability that I haven't.
I feel like I would have known it was a male.
I haven't sent 2 males to get spawned and no females yet. But, this year's coming.
I mean, I always mess up. I guess I messed up on that one. But anyway, go ahead, Jeff. Yes.
But at any rate, a big, serious drop-dead requirement is that the female striped bass have to be gravid and in spawning condition. So we can't just get striped bass year-round and spawn them. We're pretty much collecting all of our female stripers on or near their spawning areas.
It's a tight window.
Tight window, mainly based on water temperature in the spring. These fish are already close to spawning when we obtain them. And then our technique utilizes injecting them with a hormone to force them to complete the spawning process.
So you're making them basically ripen their eggs fast and go.
That's correct. That's correct. As far as wild stripers or fish that are obtained from wild water bodies, they're subject to a lot of stress.
Well, yeah, they just got electrofished and put
They
in
got
a tank.
electrofish, put in a net,
That was my fault.
put in a trucked for, anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. That hormone overcomes that stress and physiologically forces that fish to complete the spawning process. So we haven't had any success doing it without the hormones.
Gotcha. They would just stop. They would just shut down because of the stress
That's correct.
in their system. I get that. Okay. So once you got eggs, then you got the males with the milk. Then what do you do with everything?
Obviously, there's 2 processes to make hybrids. That has to be a manual process where we actually squeeze the eggs out of the female and fertilize with milk in a pan. With the straight stripers, we actually allow them to tank spawn naturally. So we put a female in a 6-foot tank with flow along with 3 to 4 males, and they naturally go through the spawning process where the fertilized eggs are collected in a specialized system. But ultimately, the fertilized eggs are treated pretty much the same. They're incubated in these 7-liter jars, which just look like a big soda bottle with water supply and whatnot. And they incubate in our water temperature for about 48 hours before they hatch. And then they're collected in aquaria. After about 2 days, they're ready to be moved again to a different culture area where we can start trying to give them some type of natural food before they're actually stocked in ponds for fingerling production.
About what time do they get stocked in ponds? I told you I was nerding out. I want to learn.
9:12 a.m.
No, like how many days?
We prefer much earlier than that. We prefer as the sun's
As
coming
the sun's
up.
coming up. Yeah, makes sense.
Before breakfast.
I got to eat.
Typically, what we found is we like to stock all of our fries 7 days post-hatch.
So after they've hatched in the jars.
After they've hatched in the jars, at the day 4 to 5 days post-hatch, they develop mouth parts and digestive systems, and they're actually ready to actively first feed. So we actually prepare Artemia or brine shrimp. A lot of people call them sea monkeys. And we actually feed those to the larval fish as first feeding, and that increases their survival by actually having a good, dense food supply for them where they can actually actively first feed. And that's one of the keys to survival, which, getting back to your postulate on early life bottlenecks, that could be what may or may not be going on
Might be starving.
with the wild populations.
There is some evidence, since we're fish nerding out,
Yeah,
and I've
I'm
been
all about
quiet, there is some evidence that, especially in the last few years where we had relatively fast warming springs, that there has been a mismatch between the juvenile fish, or really the larval fish, and their food source. Conversely, in the hatchery, you control that. And so there is no mismatch. It's silver platter time for these fish, which is maybe part of why they do well. Well, it is part of why they do well, for sure, in the hatchery.
So they go out the pond about a week after their post-hatch, and then they stay in the pond for how long?
Right at 30 to 35 days is what we found the magic time to let them cook out in the pond with a natural zooplankton population that we've gone through various management techniques to enhance.
So you're not, I know you've prepped the pond. We talked about that with Rick in the past on other things, but you've prepped the pond to grow those things in the pond, get that culture in the pond so that you can get the animals in there and they'll feed off of them. But do you actively feed those fish other than that?
We actually offer some supplemental feed after they've been in the pond for 21 days till harvest. So the final 10 to 15 days of that pond culture period, we're actually supplementing. It's a commercial diet. And striped bass and hybrid striped bass, they train to a commercial diet fairly quickly at that stage of life.
Gotcha. And so about when you get them out of the pond, you're getting ready to stock them in reservoirs and in rivers. I know we do phase twos in some of the coastal rivers, and we can talk about that. But the phase one fish, about how, these are the questions that we get asked all the time. That's why I'm asking you about how big is that fish at that point?
They can range from anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inch. And that kind of is all relative to how good the conditions were in that production pond for them.
And you can have two ponds side by side and they might be different.
I mean, you can use the same pond 2 or 3 years in a row and get different results every year. Just based on a lot of different conditions.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on.
So just to back up a step, when we've got them in the hatchery, we can really control a lot of things, their food inputs, their water quality, their flow, what density they're at. Obviously, we stock them into this phase one production pond, and we've gone through our management treatments to give it the most optimum situation possible. But that's where we're starting to lose our realm of control.
You're losing the direct control at that point.
We're losing the realm of control over a variety of things: climate, rainfall, sunshine, predation, zooplankton community, vegetation, etc.
Everything.
etc.
Yeah. So from start to finish, say a female gives you how many eggs? Generally.
Rule of thumb is 100,000 per pound. So if a 10-pounder would give us 1 million eggs.
Okay, let's go with that. So we got 1 million eggs. Out of that 1 million eggs, how many are actually going to be fertilized?
For the straight striper cross, we average ballparking at about 50%.
So we're down to 500,000. Okay. We go out to the pond. Have we lost some at that point?
Maybe 1 to 2%.
So not much.
Not much.
Not much.
Not much.
Coming out of the pond.
That's where our survival is variable.
Coming out of the pond.
That's where it was variable.
I've gotten that phone call, Jeff.
I know. And we're not perfect.
Oh, yeah. But in general,
we're ambitious, but not perfect.
Yeah, but on average,
we get about 30% return.
So from the million or from the 500,000?
From the number of fry that we're stocking.
So the 500,000.
That's right.
So you would go 500,000, you'd get 30%.
Right. 150,000.
150,000 out of the pond at that point. Just to let everybody know, it's not one for one. Because that's generally, a lot of our anglers will ask us those kinds of questions. And I don't even know the numbers. I'm always shooting from the hip sometimes with that kind of stuff.
And there's a lot of variability between females. Obviously, there's variability between ponds. And there's variability between production years as well. But that's our average.
And that's just stripers. If you do hybrids, it's even worse, right?
Well, it's similar once you get to the fry part. The fertilization part is only about 20 to 25%.
You go from 1 million to 250,000. I got you. I knew there was a difference with hybrids because it is a hybrid. It's not straight species to species. You're doing something that's unnatural.
And to me, what that tells me is for a wild year class to be produced, you got to have a lot of eggs. You got to have a lot of mamas laying a lot of eggs because there's a cut at every step, at every hour, sometimes every minute.
And that's under a controlled situation. Any little thing could throw it off in the wild, and you got to just have a lot of mamas with a lot of eggs in order to be successful. And then, even then, that success has to carry out through all those life stages. I mean, it's a miracle it ever happens, to be blatantly honest with you. But I mean, it does. I mean, obviously, they're designed that way, and it does. So it does happen that way. But anyway, I didn't know the answers to some of that, even though we've talked about it in the past. I don't know the exact answers, but I wanted to kind of walk through that for anglers because we get a lot of those questions like, how many come out of the ponds? How hard is it to grow these things? And you would probably say they're not that hard. I think it's a miracle we get anything. And it's not because of y'all. It's because of the process.
It's all called the law of averages.
Yeah, you don't ask me for one female when I used to be one of those fisheries management biologist that you speak so well of, you never asked me for one. You asked me for 10. Like I need 10 10-pounders. I could never get one 10-pounder, but that's a whole nother story. I was looking in a place that's very
Do
difficult.
we want to talk about who got them?
We know it's you. Whatever. We know it's you. We know you're special. It's okay.
I was just in the right place, right
Maybe
time.
a couple of them went 10 pounds.
I was working against all odds. I was in the Dan River. There's just not that many 10-pound females in the Dan River.
I'm just saying you needed something and we got it for you.
Yeah, we know. You're special.
I'm not. I just got good peoples.
But really, there's a lot going on at the hatchery. I mean, that's the bottom line of it. And in all of that, there's other things going on while you're doing striped bass. You're not just doing striped bass. I mean, there were times you were doing American shad at the same time, and there's that walleyes there. They're knocking on the door with one another when you're holding walleye. And you got channel catfish going on the whole time, and you got sunfish going on. There's just so much going on at the hatchery, particularly at Watha, because it's so diverse. Watha and Table Rock are very diverse hatcheries. There's a lot going on, whereas our other hatcheries are either all trout. They might be different species of trout, but they're all trout. And McKinney Lake has 2 or 3 species going on. It's a little bit smaller facility, but yeah, y'all got a lot going on at Watha for sure. Keeps you busy, doesn't it?
That's right. And that's always the challenge. That's what keeps us interested.
I think the take home of that is that we get requests from anglers to do, stock X or stock A over here. And we have to take that into account with everything else that's going on in the state, like all the other programs that we're already offering. It might be the same program, like it might be stripers or hybrids in a new reservoir, but that's a request we have because that takes space and it takes time. And there's just so much limited space and time that we have to grow everything. It's not like, oh, well, we can just tack that on. Sometimes we can. Sometimes we can tack it on. But a lot of times that request requires shifting or moving or changing direction of what we've been doing. So anyway, that's just my take home on that. A little soapbox moment. Pardon me for that. You want to talk a little bit about how to catch these boogers?
Briefly, let's do it real quick. What you need to do, there's a bait called the curse breaker. We got them.
Tied on the jig head.
Put it on a jig head, anywhere from an 1/8 to a 1/2 ounce.
Yeah. Depending on flow.
Bouncy, bouncy.
Bouncy, bouncy.
Because a straight tail, striped bass loves a straight tail.
Get in a coastal plain or get in a reservoir that these things are stocked and do that technique. And
look for bait, look for birds.
Look for bait, look for birds. And your success rate's going to go up.
Yeah. Striped bass, the beauty of striped bass is they are pretty predictable in what they eat. They want something, what would we call it? White bait. They want something white, silvery,
white, shiny,
shaddy.
Yeah, shaddy looking.
They want something shaddy. So as long as you're throwing something that's shaddish in appearance, white, silver, chartreuse with a white back, with a white belly, as long as it looks like a bait fish, a striped bass will seek it out.
And a hybrid striped bass will eat anything. Anything.
It does seem that way.
They are omnivores. They have that white bass characteristic. They will crunch on anything. It doesn't have to be that white. They'll hit that for sure. They love fish above everything else, but I've caught them on a lot of stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. So if you're in a tackle store and you're wondering what in the world kind of catch a striped bass on, one of the easiest things is a soft plastic, either in a paddle tail or a straight tail. And if you start there in a white or white-ish flavor, that's a good a jumping off point as any.
The best. In my opinion, it's the best. And we have 2 baits that look like that. We have the curse breaker and we have sparkle bridges.
They both work.
They both work. They're good. We ready for questions?
I'm ready. I like this question. There was a little bit of urgency in this question.
Was it an emergency?
I think so. Not for us, but I think it was for him.
Okay, good.
Hi, guys.
I can calm down now.
I'm at a bass club meeting and an argument just broke out. I like the drama of this email.
Yeah, I like that too.
What are the creel limits for bass? Is there no limits, or do they have to be over 12 or 14 inches? Thanks.
So the answer to that is there's a lot of different limits depending on where you are. And we're talking about multiple bass species. He said bass.
He did. It wasn't specific.
There's largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, Alabama bass. So it just depends on the species you're talking about. It depends on the body of water that you're at. You can find all of that at our website at ncwildlife.gov. That's where I would tell you to go. The state limit generally for bass, and I will lump them all together, is that you can keep 5, and 2 of those can be under 14 inches in length. That's a general rule of thumb, but I would tell you don't use that unless you know that that is the rule of thumb where you're fishing. Alabama bass, it's an invasive. We've talked about it numerous times on the podcast. There are no limits to Alabama bass. You can keep as many as you want, take as many as you want home. They are tasty.
Don't turn them loose.
Don't turn them loose. Don't take them somewhere else. They're still continuing to spread across the state of North Carolina. We're finding them in new places that we never, ever, well, we didn't want them anywhere. And now we have them in places that they're potentially going to harm some of our best bass fisheries we've ever had. So we'll find out. Time will tell.
Don't argue. Go to ncwildlife.gov.
Yeah, don't argue. Don't get in a fight over it. Go to ncwildlife.gov. All that information's right there. And it's fairly accessible. It's not hard to find.
Okay, our next question. I like this question a lot because it ends in of something that pulls at my youthful heartstrings.
I know where this is headed then.
2-part question. First part. I've noticed that some bluegill are lighter than others, and I was wondering why this is.
This did not go where I thought we were going. You talking about color?
Mm-hmm. Not in weight. That was just being an age structure thing. They're younger.
Lighter in color than other bluegills.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is correct. They have lots of different color variations, particularly the sunfish family. They're all over the map, and bluegill in particular.
Traditionally, males are darker, especially during spawning window, than the females.
Correct. That is true. But you get outside the spawning window, and
there's a lot of variation.
There'll still be color variations in bluegill. But yes, males are typically, I would say, more colored up during spawning than the females are.
Right. Part 2. Have you ever tried fly fishing for bluegill?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Lord, yes.
Lord help us
a
all.
Sweet mother's milk
Yes.
of popping bugging for bluegills.
Popping bugging for bluegills? Man alive. What a fantastic day on the water.
There's nothing wrong with that.
It is some of the best fishing you will ever do.
It's like fried chicken and cornbread.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fried chicken, cornbread on the boat, popping bugs with bluegills. I'm all about it. Let's do that. I'm sensing a podcast is coming on, and maybe video to go with it of showing this activity. Because
don't tempt me with a good time.
Oh my gracious! And I'll tell you something else. Like where I grew up in Craven County, particularly upstream of New Bern, in the dead of summer, the warmouth love a popping bug. Love a pop. You won't catch anything else, but you will catch warmouth. And they'll be, I mean, if you know anything about a warmouth, they got a very large mouth to be a sunfish. And so they'll knock it pretty hard, bite it, about scare you when they hit it. And then as soon as they feel the tension on the line, they're just out, just gone and just lay up on their side and get reeled in. But they're fun to catch. Anyway, sorry, that wasn't about bluegill.
My favorite popping bug is the round denny.
I don't know the names of any of the popping bugs. I just
You don't need to know the name of any other one.
I mean, you're smarter than I am. Well, go ahead and nail that down. I didn't need to tell you. You knew that already.
Did you hear that? Okay, we got that on.
It's on tape.
Okay, I'll listen to that a lot.
Yeah, just put it on repeat.
Mm-hmm.
That little section.
I'm gonna make it your ringtone.
But I loved popping bug fishing when I was a kid. Loved it. That's how I learned how to fly fish. Was that.
That's how I learned to fly fish.
I don't know that I've ever fly fished for trout. Don't write me and tell me I'm a problem. I mean, you can, but my fly fishing has been other species. It's not been trout, and bluegills where it started.
Okay. The Raccoon Master forwarded us this question, so I decided to use it. He saw an article where it was cold coming in the spring, but we had a period.
We had a period of
earlier
time
this year that was cold.
We should worry about.
And saw some bait fish that were killed due to the cold in the local lakes. And he was wondering what kind of impact will that have in long term on the predatory fish?
My first answer is it depends on the severity of the kill. Typically, he probably saw threadfin shad. They typically, as Jeff will attest, they are sensitive to the cold weather, aren't they, Jeff?
Yes, they are. They don't like it under 50.
Yeah, the whole pond will go belly up on you when you're growing them. But it depends on the severity of the kill. In most kills, it's a blip on the radar. It doesn't have really any effect. they reproduce really rapidly. So the ones that do survive will reproduce pretty quickly in the lake, and it'll be a blip on the radar and you won't know it. In the instance that it is a very significant kill, and we had that back in probably 2014 on some of the Triangle area lakes, it can cause problems. It caused a significant downturn in the crappie fishery at Jordan Lake for a year or two. It basically wiped out the striped bass population in Jordan Lake during that time. For the most part, it was kind of the death knell. What happened was that losing all those fish early in the year made the population kind of basically starve to death. And the stripers got stressed in the summer because of it. They were real thin going into the summer, and they ended up dying. And then the crappie just kind of just disappeared. Like, where did they go? We didn't even see them float. We saw the stripers float. So if it's significant enough, it can cause a problem. But as all things, even if it's if it's a blip or if it's a long-term thing, it generally recovers on its own, and it doesn't really need any help in that situation.
Yeah, and even if it is, a lot of times they'll just transfer over to eating something else.
They'll eat something else.
So.
Yeah. It really makes a difference in a really high-density fishery. Like Jordan Lake's crappie is high density. There's a lot of them, and they're big. And so when that food source goes away, they start struggling. So anyway.
Well, this has been great. Jeff, if you want to go see Jeff, you should call first.
Yes.
Sure enough.
But call down there. If you don't know how to get up with them, you can email us. But call Jeff, set up an appointment. I mean, you got take a lunch.
There's not a lunch around.
There's not a lunch around. But if you want to stop by, make sure somebody's there to kind of give you and has time that day to give you kind of the nickel tour. But it's a really interesting facility. You're welcome to stop by. The only thing that we would ask is that you call first and make sure that that's a good day.
We'll make your tour more beneficial if we know you're coming. But obviously, we have standard visiting days, 7 to 3, Monday through Friday.
There you go.
Yeah. If you call, you might get a more deluxe tour.
You get the dime tour instead of the nickel tour.
If you don't call, you might say there's a pond right there. Go peek at it.
Well,
it's hard to find somebody when they're on the other side of 30-plus ponds.
That's right. Or when they're in a pond.
Or they're in the pond. That's right. That is true.
A lot of our activities are seasonal. So, if you can arrange your tour certain times of the year, give us a call. We can suggest the best times to come when you can experience the most that you can experience at Watha.
Depends on your goals.
Dead of winter, not so much.
Not so much, but we got something to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other pearls of wisdom from the longest in the tooth fish division employee before we go?
Just keep fishing for stripers.
There you go.
I think that's great advice.
Solid advice. In fact, I'm going to do that.
Yes.
Well, Ben, we've done another one.
This has been great. Jeff, I really appreciate it. I hope you guys get out and go catch some fish.
Yeah. We'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for listening to the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission's podcast, Better Fishing with Two Ball Biologists. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a positive review and share with your friends. If you have questions, you can email us at twoballbiologists@ncwildlife.gov, or for more information, visit ncwildlife.gov. Until next time, stay safe and take somebody fishing.